And one thing I saw in the research too that I kind of marveled at was the run up to A Love Supreme in these kind of the stretch of years that you're talking about here. It said that him and this band were playing like two shows a night almost every single night, and only really taking breaks to record albums.
Right.
Which
And
is
unlike rock bands that have like 9 months to take a break, these guys were basically writing during the day and then rehearsing it on stage as part of their shows. And then when they had
yeah.
it good enough, they'd roll into the studio. Like, shit, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, that just the idea of working anything that much is crazy.
Totally.
But I
So,
mean, it does come through. Like that's like you're hearing the culmination of all that work on A Love Supreme, really.
absolutely. So, yeah, now we're kind of up to Love Supreme point, and it kind of starts off with a interesting, spiritual, perhaps even like prophetic way. The story goes that Coltrane, for days on end, was hiding up in his basement at his house. He'd sneak downstairs every once in a while to grab a bite of food, but that was about it. And he was just waiting from God to hear what his next album would be.
Hmm.
So his wife, Alice, basically said one day he came down, with a glowing aura about him. He almost looked like Moses. And he said, I finally got it. I'm not waiting for any of it. I have every single bit of it already. It's done. So from there, he got his guys together. And on the evening of December 9th, from 7 p.m. to 12 a.m., at Van Gelder's studio in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, joined by pianist McCoy Tyner, bassist Jimmy Garrison, and drummer Alvin Jones, they recorded Love Supreme. The lights were dimmed in the studio to give the four members the feeling of being in one of those nightclubs where, they were most in their element to improvise and rehearse and collaborate together. Um, Tyner, after the fact, had referred to the album as a natural extension and culmination of chemistry honed through years of playing together live. Like you said, man, 2 days, two shows a day, for years and years, and all this work they're putting in. I mean, these guys were connected, man. It's unreal. So basically, Coltrane rolls in, nothing written on paper to play, no instruction of what to play, just bare bones tempo, key, and here's a groove. The intention is summed up by Mr. Coltrane on the album liner notes. During the year 1957, I experienced, by the grace of God, a spiritual awakening which was to lead me to a richer, fuller, more productive life. At that time, in gratitude, I humbly asked to be given the means and privilege to make others happy through music. I feel this has been granted through His grace. This album is a humble offering to Him, an attempt to say thank you, God, through our work. Even as we do in our hearts and with our tongues, may He help and strengthen all men in every good endeavor. All praise to God. So there you have it. That's the idea behind the whole album. The 5 hour session produced a gem that's 32 minutes and 47 seconds long. Arguably one of the greatest jazz albums ever created. Acknowledgement, resolution, pursuance, and psalm, the track names. Um, Now, if you go on Spotify and you pull up like the complete masters, you will hear alternate versions of the first two tracks. Uh, but the record company at the time had thrown away most of the other masters that weren't used on the album. So these were the only ones to actually like survive and make the cut.
Hmm.
There was a second day where he had brought in an entirely different group of musicians to play and record some of the ideas. But the musicians were so baffled by what he was trying to do. And there was like I said, there's no music, there's no notes, there's no, chart to put in front of a guy. So even though these guys were like improv players, they're just like, I don't know what it is you want from me. So ultimately, Coltrane and the team agreed, like, let's just go with the first night stuff. But the demos do exist out there a little bit of some of that day two stuff, but none of it was used.
Yeah, I see here it's listed on that Complete Masters as a sextet session. So
Mm-hmm.
it must have been the sixth, and then yeah,
He
it is
brought
listed
in another
December
sax
10th.
player. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that almost seems like a cruel joke when you're talking about, oh, here's the here's the three guys I've you know been attached to the hip for or attached to the hip with for 5-6 years.
Right,
But maybe maybe you guys can come in.
right. I
Yeah, I'd
mean,
be in there like, what the fuck am I gonna do?
it's kind of one of those things. Like I was laughing, like visualizing myself there. Like,
Yeah.
well, shit, we paid for the studio time. We might as well use it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we already got last night. Let's see what happens today. Okay, well, we got night
Yeah.
one.
Well.
Whatever. We're not getting a refund, so might as well do it.
Yeah.
So the first track, Acknowledgement, uh, is Coltrane acknowledging the divine. Shows some themes and ideas of what Coltrane was trying to play in listening to later takes. He had reconvened, like I said, with another sax player the next day to see what else could come of the session. Some ideas had carried over, but ultimately just the night one versions. Um, one of the key signatures in this is the repetition of the main riff throughout
Mm-hmm.
all 12 keys, basically for him symbolizing that God is everywhere. In music, God is in all these places, in all these keys. Um, that excited line, that flourish of the sax right after the gong hits, that's really just that initial feeling of finding God in his time of need and seeing the path that God chose for him. Um, Only on the original release version of the track you can hear John chanting "A Love Supreme." That was actually overdubbed during the recording process, so like all the other takes you hear on it, that won't have it on there.
Hmm. Yeah, and I thought the opening of Acknowledgement sounded like I thought it was trying to evoke like a sunrise, and
Exactly.
especially after you go through the whole thing and hear the ending, which to me sounds like a sunset. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I was just trying to pull I was just trying to pull those things out. I mean, that's definitely what it sounds like to me. But like,
Yeah. No. I mean,
as
it's
kind of a jazz Luddite, like I'm always
totally.
I'm always a little bit like, is that it? I don't know.
I mean, I think within. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a new day, it's rebirth, it's finding this new path in life. It's all these things that basically says, "Shit, this is the new thing. This is me now. This is not the old stuff."
Mm-hmm.
So the
Yeah,
second
and
track. Oh, go for it.
oh, I was gonna
Sorry.
say, and just last thing on Acknowledgement, like just having something um, that is like a handhold, the 4 note "A Love Supreme" run,
Mm-hmm.
and um, you know, in addition to what he's talking about, showing that God exists in all these places and all the different keys, um, just laying it out like that, like, hey, this tool we're going to use is going to, it can be everywhere, and it can be on every single, it can be in every single one of these. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it's very much, um, it's very much a primer for what's coming next. And I don't know that he did it on purpose, but this feels very much like, a perfect in for, especially this kind of jazz. Like it felt like a very friendly way for somebody like me who doesn't listen to a lot and doesn't know a lot to have something, that is both important but at the same time like super accessible.
Yes.
uh, yeah, I mean, and
Well,
I saw a few
I
different
think,
sources mention
yeah,
that it is accessible, but even if I hadn't seen that, like, it feels that way.
right. I mean, if you think about it, kind of compared to like those number one songs you had, talked about at the time, pop radio is 2.5, 3 minute pop songs, but this is still like an all time number one selling album because it is so accessible across so many things, whether or not you are a jazz nut, whether or not, you're a spiritual type. Like there's just so many things that are inviting about it. And yeah, that track one, like how can you not be hooked to see where it goes? And it just get better from there.
Mm-hmm. And there's a real, that the four notes is like a true guide to the whole thing, or it's something to it's almost like a vehicle you can like ride through the
Yep.
whole album. Like even if you're not fully understanding at first everything that's going on,
Oh, it's very
there's a
much
perspective,
your
there's a
cart and
place to
on. It's a
be.
small world,
Yeah, exactly.
It's carrying you through,
Yeah,
even if,
and
like
I
you said,
do.
you don't understand what's going on in the periphery. It's
Yeah,
there
I do
for you.
really love that. I do really love that about it.
So the second track, resolution. This speaks to his finding the resolve to pursue the divine. I've found God. What am I going to do about it? So this one definitely did take a couple takes. Laid it on the seventh take, actually. Um, just trying to find the right groove and the right thing. So, yes, they did it in 5 hours, but not everything was perfect right off the bat. There was some tweaking, some working, some disagreements. This one opens with a solo from Coltrane that's just super high energy. For me, at least, it screams, elation, joy, and really just conveys the feelings that he experiences during worship, in whatever form that takes. And then I think also, yeah, just a huge sound on this one, with the drums chugging along and that snare and cymbal pattern, just, setting the backbone for it. Just a great second track.
Yeah, and speaking of the drums, one thing I really appreciated was that the kind of the live version, the live in Seattle, the way it's recorded, um, the the drums are way more up front than it is on the official release. So if if that's something that you want to concentrate more on, or hear more of and study, like there's a really good way to kind of, it's almost like placing yourself somewhere else in the room. um
Yeah.
you know they're not playing the exact same thing again, but I mean that is
Conceptually, it's all
live
there.
performance
Yeah.
of the suite, so it's not
Right.
it's not a completely different thing. um but yeah, if that's something you're interested in, definitely check out that live version.
No, and, I kind of talked about like things I might be interested in hearing on vinyl. Or, this is kind of one of them too, where it's like, I wonder what it sounded like when it was put out. We're listening to it now on Spotify, where it's been
Yeah,
remastered, digitized, and
yeah,
run through all the plugins and everything like that. And yes, of course, Coltrane's supposed to stand out, but like you said, the recording in Seattle, having the drums in the lead kind of gives it a different feel and a sound to it. So, what's
yeah.
the vinyl like?
And this probably is the first time on the podcast where I was trying to kind of go out of my way to figure out, like, all right, are there, I've got the, yeah, I think we both have the external sound card now, and then I was looking for settings within Spotify to make sure, like, okay, what's the highest resolution I've got on this, and
Mm-hmm.
like make sure that I tried listening to it through this external sound card that's all about sound quality and stuff like that, and sticking the pair of headphones I'm using for the podcast like into it to see, like, okay, what is what's the top level of like fidelity that I can hear this in. And it did make a difference, like.
That actually, yeah, to audiophile nerd out for a second. But I think maybe after we're done with this, I'm going to look for some, like, see if there's any FLAC recordings out there, like
Mm-hmm.
the flawless audio, just
Yeah,
from the vinyl. I mean, there seems to be a lot for that kind of era of stuff. So maybe that's out there for this. All right. So we're going on to the third track, which is titled Pursuance,
mm-hmm.
the lifelong act of pursuance, trying to live virtuously in the face of his struggles. This one starts with an incredible drum solo from Elvin Jones that really sets the page to search for one's higher power throughout these musical themes. Uh, the bass solo towards the end, for me, an interpretation symbolizing kind of that rock bottom moment, during this pursuance before finding this higher
Yeah.
power.
Yeah, I did write down that one of the more arresting moments for me of the entire album is that bass solo,
Mm-hmm.
where it does have a darker feel than the
Yeah.
rest of the album. So I kind of, yeah, I was definitely getting the same. I was getting the same vibe. It isn't something that I feel like I've heard before from a stand-up bass, where it's it's taking it's taking a solo moment, and it's not doing what you would normally expect for somebody to take a spotlight, solo. He's kind of creating little sketches or little runs that are hemmed in by, yeah, like a chord, and it's
Right.
often like a discordant kind of chord. Like, it's really interesting for taking your time to be the star, and you know and using
Right.
it to he's almost creating a little film within a film there.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is painting, a different picture. And I think that's kind of a really cool departure, that like you don't need a ton of these moments on the album, but just having that one, before the big crescendo like that's perfect placement and just really cool to give it some different context. And then yeah,
Yeah.
I mean he doesn't just do like a standard, walking bass line solo or
Hmm.
some putzing around. There's like some kind of discordant melody to it, and stands out. And finally, the long journey, the fourth track, Psalm, celebration in song of what he had found spiritually. For me, I felt like this one really had a different tone than the other three movements. This one has the big timpani drums to give it that grandiose, feeling of almost maybe like heaven. Um, with overdubs on it too to fatten up the instruments and everything. And this is just really an effort to express like his gratitude towards God, his newfound spirituality, and yeah, just make people happy through music. Like he said he wanted to do.
Yeah, and the background, like the piano and drums and bass on this one, I I think you had mentioned to me previously that they weren't informed up ahead of time that what he was doing was interpreting his written poem into his sax runs.
Correct.
And what they're playing is a little more, yeah, I don't really have the word for it, but it's not a droning, but it is
Kind of a
it's
canvas.
yeah, it's very yeah, it's more of a canvas that he's drawing on, and it's something that's a little more subdued, which is really interesting compared to what else is going on in the rest of the album.
Yeah, no, I mean, between that and kind of like the Martin Luther King thing, we were talking about with the Alabama song earlier, just like absolutely genius, way of writing music, to take, the poem he had written and turn it into this
Yeah, and
absolute like
it's really clear too once once you know that that's what
right.
once you know that that's what he's doing. And if you put the text in front of you, and like you can read along
Mm-hmm.
with what he's playing. But I didn't find that out until a couple of listens in.
Right.
And like it's no less enjoyable not knowing that, or it's not like baffling if you don't know that that's what he's doing. it
No, I
really
mean
is it
it's
really
just
is like an
that much
incredible
more
kind of
flavor
artistry.
on the cake. Really, I mean it's just
Yeah.
like one more amazing point to it all. Like, okay, this
Yeah.
this could be just this guy winging it over these notes. Oh wait, he's actually doing
Yeah.
this, and these little flourishes are because he's like literally again trying to preach. So he's doing that preacher, really selling this note, this word right here, and really hitting the emphasis. Like,
Yeah.
damn, dude,
What a
that's next
yeah.
level.
What an interesting idea. And I don't know, it seems like in music when people have ideas that are akin to that, trying to really stretch the bounds of what they're doing musically, it's really hard to land it as successfully as what's going on here.
Yeah, it takes a special brain, a divine one, some might say in
Mm-hmm.
Coltrane's instance, to really, have the ability to translate it that way and, make it accessible for all of us. Like, on the surface, like you said, we hear this great music. I didn't know much about, the actual context of it until researching it either. And it's just like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do? Sit down and, pull out a page of Jurassic Park and transcribe it into a song, reading all the lines like out of a Michael Crichton book? No, like
No.
even if I did that, it sounds stupid and like shit. But here he is. He's writing his own poem, from the depths of his soul, and then expressing it in another means. Like, kudos, Mr. Coltrane. Kudos.
Yeah. So any kind of sum up thoughts on like the time you spent with the album, or like what
Yeah.
kind of how it landed with you?
I yeah, a couple. The familiarity in the struggles and kind of finding the renewed spirituality, which led to this moment for him. I'm never going to have a love supreme. My contribution, might be making a few people laugh through a podcast or, entertaining somebody. Um, we all kind of give that back in different ways, but just that story to me is so warming just to hear what he had overcome. And, even if it was for a short while before he passed, he was able to do and give so much, and just absolutely inspiring and, instantly like to the top of my list of like one of the most interesting musicians I've ever learned about, honestly. Um, and, I had always loved and respected his playing, but I'd never taken into consideration how outside of the box and groundbreaking a lot of it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and kind of tying into what you said, the after I'd kind of heard the story in the context of the album, it's it sounds like you know he'd explained that he had come out the other end of a very dark time, but it
Mm-hmm.
sounds overall kind of it's almost like propulsive. Like there's almost like an actual there's like an actual inertia that you can almost feel of him coming out of this spot and
Yeah.
blasting into this new part of his life. And you can see it in the writing of the liner notes and the poem. Like it's somebody who's ecstatic about
Mm-hmm.
their spirituality and what's being given to him by God, and like the inspiration and just the love of what he's getting to do.
Right.
Like and it really does, like it really does translate into the actual music that you're hearing too. um I don't know that I've ever heard anything more um I don't know that heard anything more successfully expressive. I mean, it's tied into how clearly the intention and the thoughts behind the album are stated. But even besides that, like I don't know that I've ever heard anything more expressive of what the artist is feeling and thinking
Yeah.
that goes into an album. And on top of that comes out just being so good too.
Right.
like that, that doesn't necessarily that doesn't necessarily have to translate to an actual good or great album, but like to have that and to have it be turned into a great album is really something else.
And yeah, for me, it's pieces of work like this, and I'm not putting them even in the same country, let alone ballpark. But when people ask, why do I listen to things like Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, instrumental music? Because this is a perfect example of there's literally 3 words used on the album, but you can convey so much. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not, yes, there is the one familiar melodic theme that they touch on, throughout it. But at the same time, there's so much of it that it's just, constantly evolving and pushing forward music. It doesn't have to be, these repetitive, chords and pop cycles of how a song should sound on a radio. It's just expression. And that's, absolutely beautiful thing to me. And you don't, it's not dependent on lyrics. It's not dependent on anything other than just the person playing.
Yeah, yeah. And then also one last time point out um point out the interplay between the quartet that's been honed and practiced for so long. I mean, no matter what it is, it could be throwing a ball back and forth. If you're doing the same thing with 4 people 2 times a day for this many years, nearly every single day, it's it's gonna end up being impressive, and you're gonna end up having in a
You're either going to kill
relation.
each other or have a
Yeah,
Jesus moment.
yeah. If you don't murder each other on the way, on the other end of this, you know 5-6 year journey, you're gonna you're gonna have something impressive, and you're gonna have like your own language. You're gonna have an intuitiveness between everybody, no matter what you're doing. But and that's what you get to listen to on A
Yeah.
Love Supreme too, in addition to all these other things like landing correctly, or just good decisions, like
It's just the
a
ultimate
solid
synergy. Yeah.
intention. You get this on top of it too. Like it's like a superhero team working
Right.
together.
The,
Right?
the, the
Like,
Jazz Avengers
yeah,
put out
that's,
an
I mean,
album.
that's just another layer of enjoyment that you get to have on this. Like,
Totally.
yeah, that's amazing.
Well, let's say a few more words here about Mr. Coltrane before we move on to our next stuff. Just kind of want to put a wrap on him a little bit. Um, so yeah, you talked about the poem, the liner notes, starting with the title "Love Supreme" matches up with the sax melody, 1 syllable per note. Sax solo has the same number of syllables as the poem, up to the word "Amen." Every time the poem says "Thank you, God," Coltrane plays the "Thank you, God" motif. One of the iterations of "Thank you, God" appears later on the recording than it does on the liner notes. The fact you can hear this is proof of how clearly one can hear the words in his playing. Coltrane said it himself, although rather cryptically in his liner notes. The fourth and last part is a musical narration of the theme of Love Supreme, which is written in the context. The mistake the people made here is to assume that he meant a musical theme. As we've all learned in school, literature has themes too, and in this case, the supreme love for God is indeed the theme of the album. And the poem where Coltrane expressed that is indeed written in the context of the album notes. So, moving forward, um, where are we at here? Gotta edit this part right
If you're,
here.
I was gonna say, if you're looking for the next segment, it's a bathroom break.
There you go. Do you need one?
Go to here.
All right. Yeah. So from here, the guys continued working together for a little bit. Coltrane went on to release several more albums, very free, avant garde, modal jazz, some, You might even describe as like a cacophony. The album Ascension had moved him definitely into that avant-garde territory. So I do have a sample here of that to play, just to kind of show you where he kept going. So again, the title Ascension, dealing with themes on spirituality, but you definitely hear the music starting to take an even more just open approach. And I'm not being I'm not joking necessarily when I say 90% of that album is like that. There's a few like patterns here and there that you can pick out, or kind of get some space, or maybe like the bass has a part, or the drum just kind of lays down a steady beat. But for the most part, that's kind of what he got into towards the end. There were some people, although kind of unconfirmed, that with LSD coming into popularity at the time, that he was experimenting with that, and whether or not he needed it. That's always the eternal question with an artistic mind like that. But you can definitely see some weird stuff going on.
Yeah, and I know I believe last mainline episode we had was the Radiohead album, OK Computer, but they started listing. I believe they started listing John Coltrane as an influence around then. And after listening to that clip and the album we had, like I started to get it. Like the places where they do place brass in Kid A and Amnesiac, like you can when I had first heard that, I was like, I don't completely understand where
Right.
where it's plugged in, but now that I'm more familiar, I can definitely hear it, which is cool.
Definitely. So yeah, he kind of kept on his creative path, and then passed away in July of 1967 at the age of 40 from liver cancer. Basically his earlier battles with narcotics and alcohol had taken their toll well before he got clean. He was survived by his wife, Alice, who was also, in later one of the iterations of his band as his piano player. His children, John Jr., who actually passed away in 1982 at only 18 years of age, and then his sons, Ravi Coltrane and Oran Coltrane, all musicians who followed in their parents' footsteps. And kind of bringing it back to the themes of the album and just his spirituality in general. I think one thing that I really kind of appreciate is that there's no specific dogma that he's trying to preach.
Right.
Throughout his life, he was very open and very well read. He studied Eastern, Western religions just in search of universal truth. He was well read on African history, Greek philosophy, really any and everything.
Yeah, that was something that was kind of striking in the research too. Is that yeah, it wasn't like he was. It wasn't like he was coming at it or had these inspirations from a any particular denomination or even real specific religion that he was viewing it through. Like it was very much, yeah, it was very much
Yeah,
his
it's
own
just
conception of God and his own
him
conception
conveying
of love, and
exactly his interpretation of love in the universe, and his spiritual being, and there was kind of no right or wrong answer. It was just a universal, never-ending quest for him.
yeah, yeah.
But one cool thing we're actually probably going to have, if it's not in this episode, by the time you're listening, we will have a companion episode. Um, there was a church in San Francisco that actually spawned from John Coltrane's music, his beliefs, particularly this album, Love Supreme. One night, a couple celebrating their first anniversary, went out on the town to explore the jazz clubs. They got front row seats because they knew the bouncer. And out walks Mr. Coltrane, and both of them at the same time had the vision that the Holy Spirit was with Coltrane that night. They referred to it as their baptism by sound, and from there, they went on to start the Church of Coltrane, which still exists today, some 50 plus years later. But absolutely incredible history to it. Their services are full of his music. They encourage people to bring instruments and jam with them. Just a wonderful thing, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that interview with you guys.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that.
That'd be super fun. Oh, are you hungry at all?
I'm a little hungry. I may need to make a stop first, though.
Oh, well, we can two birds with one stone. You want to meet me in the bathroom?
Yeah, I'll meet you in the bathroom. So for anybody who hasn't listened to all our previous episodes, where I believe I've mentioned this just about every time, our co-host Helio, in a second life, or a kind of a like a superhero other identity, he's a
Like
true
Clark
blue.
Kent, yeah.
Yeah, he's like a true blue top chef. And I feel like I need to mention it every time, but this is a show where we love to do bits, but that is no bit. He really he really is. So one thing we like to do on these mainline episodes is have him come up with a recipe that pairs well with the album that we're reviewing this week. So without further ado, if you would let us know what we get along with John Coltrane's A Love Supreme.
So this one is not overly complicated. It kind of came to me in a divine sense too, just from those three words. A love supreme, I'm going to give you a pizza supreme. So for that, I'm going to share my dough recipe, like
Oh,
letting it sit out overnight on the counter. You don't need to knead it or anything like that. I got a good sauce recipe, kind of talk about some of the ingredients you could use to build your pizzas and maybe some others you don't think of. So I think it'll be a fun one. I mean, who doesn't love pizza?
yeah. I especially, whenever I get the chance, I will always jump on a Supreme Pizza, because I can't really bring it home because I'm the only one who likes a bunch of crazy stuff all together on a pizza. Um, my son, if he has his way, will only get uh, only pineapple. I'm not
Oh,
talking. I'm not talking like ham and pineapple. Will One thing that the only version that all three of us will eat is pepperoni and
okay.
pineapple.
Oh
But
yeah,
his
so good.
slices afterwards, or his plate afterwards, will have little piles of pepperonis or hams, because the only thing that he wants on his pizza is the pineapples.
That's one
Um,
of those you got to enjoy that while it lasts because one of these days he's going
yeah,
to be 12 and killing it all, and you'd be like, oh, where's all my
yeah, no,
pepperoni?
I've been thinking of that lately, because we are in the era where you gotta, if you're eating, you have to tell him, hey, eat your food.
Yeah,
Every
it's
5 minutes or
not a
so.
toy.
But I
Yeah,
do appreciate, I do appreciate that there's gonna be a time where I'm like, you're clearing out my bank account, man.
yeah. Oh
So
yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I'll just I'll enjoy it while I
That,
can.
that day is coming.
I won't get too mad about having to direct him into it.
No, it's funny you bring that up though. Like for me, man, I don't really like veggies on my pizza personally.
Hmm.
Like I'm all about the pizza, like whatever it is, pepperoni, sausage, salami, bacon, chicken, whatever. But I think in honor of Love Supreme, we gotta go Pizza Supreme. Gotta tell you how to get some good roast peppers on there, and maybe some good olives and mushrooms to use. So you gotta load it up right.
Yeah, and that's one of the only ways where I really, really like olives and mushrooms.
Hmm.
Just getting it all at the same time, along with some sausage. Like, There's nothing better. I hope one day maybe at least my son will join me in thinking that, and maybe
Oh,
we'll
totally.
actually be able to order some supreme pizzas every once in a while.
Hey, you keep pushing it, eventually they'll come around.
Yeah. Well, maybe
No,
this week I'll tell them, hey, this is for the podcast. Like we have to do this. We have to make
so
this.
at the risk of turning into a Dave Portnoy venture here, where's your favorite slice in the area?
Oh,
Or I guess what's your go-to?
I've I mean my default answer here is Zeke's, but with the caveat that like the last couple of times that I've gone to Zeke's, it hasn't quite been Zeke's, and I don't know if it's the locations I'm going to or if they've lost a step. But
Oh,
I think I think if I think of like one specific time and like slice that was the best I've had is the location that's at 5 Points here in Seattle.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's been at least a couple times where I've gone to that one, and like when they do it right, it's like really good. And I know me and you have been there together at least once, so that's
Oh yeah.
one of the times I'm thinking of. I know that you experienced with me. Um,
No, I'm with you. There's one up in Issaquah, kind of close to me, and it's good, but it's not like it didn't hit the same way it did like in Seattle.
no, I wonder if that's like a flagship location where they send their all stars or something. Because
I mean, it's probably pretty high
you're gonna
volume.
have
Yeah,
tourists at that one, and you've got the people
downtown
who are
to
in
deliver to.
downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe that's it. I've also been enjoying Mod Pizza. I really don't mind that one, especially for
For
something
the
that's
price,
generally kind
man.
of
Yeah,
fast. Yeah.
yeah.
um,
No, and they make them pretty good.
yeah. If we're down at like the science center, like that's gonna be the go to for lunch.
That's one of the few things. Yeah, I know I can take the family out because
Yeah.
everybody can get what they want, and there's no fighting.
I forget I forget if we talked about it on the pod too, but I believe there's the North Lake that we had that one time here. I want to say North Lake
No
Tavern
longer
or something like that.
exists. Yeah,
Really? Okay.
it closed after 40 something years and became a big Mario's.
Yeah, but I want to say did we get it like uncooked there and cook it at home or something? Like I
We
have this
did for
memory of
like the
that.
Super
Okay.
Bowl, I think. Yeah,
All right.
and
Yeah.
that
There you
was
go. Yeah,
yeah.
that was
That's
another
those
one.
are
That was another one that sticks in the memory.
oh yeah, those were dank ass pizzas.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
sorry, I'm stealing the intro. I know I've got you
it's
listed here,
okay.
but all right. As we get to the spin the wheel portion of the show, which again, being away from it for so long, like,
So
like
exciting,
it
isn't
gets
it?
super, yeah, it gets really exciting. But before we get to that, can you show off, listeners, you're going to want to tune into the video version of this. We'll put it up somewhere. But can you show off a little something something that came in the mail for you this week?
I can, but a little bit of context on how hard it was to come by this for whatever reason.
Oh yeah,
So we started cooking up this show in what, mid-December of last year,
yeah,
somewhere thereabouts. So roughly 6 months ago. Um, and I think at first we were fine with pulling the enemy top 500 list off the internet, but eventually it became a quest to find an actual physical copy of the magazine.
yeah. There you go.
So I think through three vendor cancellations because they couldn't find their copies. A few websites, yeah, getting back to me saying, "Oh, sorry, we're actually out of
Yeah,
stock of that one."
we claimed to have this, but once we actually looked for it,
Right? Oh, yeah, we don't. Sorry, we lost it in a fire, flood, or
yeah,
insert
and
thing here.
normally, I would think normally people who hoard piles of magazines,
Right.
those are usually not I wouldn't imagine those to be scatterbrained people, like that just doesn't sound like something that they do.
Nah, especially if you're selling, hundreds of them online like that. Yeah,
No, no, of course. That
very
sounds like a very
organized.
normal. That sounds like a very normal, organized person, right?
I do feel like I need to like library bound this or something to keep it safe and protected. For next thing
Yeah.
I know, like my cat's gonna be
Go
scratching
get
on it.
the yeah. Go get the comic book slipcase.
Yes, there you go. But
Yeah.
yes, one more time. It's probably looking backwards because of webcam and all that. But yes, the
Oh,
enemy top 500.
well, right now it's looking upside down. Is that the?
Oh, oh,
I was like, I don't think your webcam can do that, but no, actually,
use
it's
was.
showing up normal for me. I think it might show
Oh,
up
okay,
backwards for you.
that makes sense. Use was
We'll see.
RDWO.
Yeah.
Looks like I'm talking into my wallet, Chief.
So
Cool.
yeah. So actually, to utilize this new tool, how about I spin the number and then you pull it out of the actual magazine.
Sold.
All right, here we go. I'm spinning up the random number generator. I'm making sure this time that it says 1 through 500. We did have a mistake at one one spin where I forgot to do that. It was only spinning 1 through 100. Okay, here we go. So I'm hitting the start button, which starts spinning around random numbers, and I'm about to hit stop. And we are at number 375. I don't know why I feel like that's really close to something we've
I think
done
we did
and possibly.
376 before.
Yeah, I was going to say it's either something we've done or something very, very close.
Well, would you like to know what it is?
I always love wow.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
let
read
me
the description. I'm gonna read the description first.
okay. Oh, that
His,
we should do that every time and see if the other person can actually tell what it is.
you'll
But
guess. Well,
cut out any pertinent names that'll give it away. All
fair
right.
enough.
Yeah, let's see if I can grab
This
this out of the
album
air.
was released in 1994. Um, the description: his starkest solo material, the blank man made a surprise venture into bombastic rock.
Man, you said surprise venture there, and my brain locked onto, oh, is this sea change? He made a detour to bombastic rock. Mm,
I'm gonna read it again, but I'm gonna give you the full thing.
okay.
His starkest solo material, the Smiths man made a surprise venture into bombastic rock.
It's a Morrissey album?
It is a Morrissey album.
Interesting. Okay.
Foxhall and I.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm not
So we
familiar with
are.
that one, but well, I've got like I've got like the level 2 familiarity where I'm like I've heard that album name before.
I have
Interesting.
not,
Okay.
but I mean, clearly familiar with the Smiths and familiar with his reputation as a
In
solo
1990,
individual.
yeah, 1994. That's some time after his heyday, huh?
Yeah. So
Interesting.
kind of as you like to do, some albums around there.
Yeah, please do.
Working backwards at 371, Beck's Odelay, 372, Atomizer by Big Black, 373, There's No Place Like America Today by Curtis Mayfield, 374, In the Wee Small Hours by Frank Sinatra.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be an interesting week when we hit Frank Sinatra.
379, The Boy with the Arab Strap,
The album or the band?
the album by Belle and SebAstian, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, we get to do a little Morrissey finally on our UK-based magazine show.
Yeah, interesting. We'll have to reach out and get some of our Brit correspondence opinions on this one.
I think so. I think you're right.
Excellent.
Well,
All right. Well, we've
yeah,
got it all lined up.
super fun episode this week. I'm gonna miss Mr. Coltrane, but I don't think he's
Yeah,
gonna be far from the dial. Yeah.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, especially because of the short runtime. I don't think I'm gonna let this one, go immediately.
It's such a
It's gonna
great
get some more
throw on
spins.
album. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you do land like a FLAC version or something like that, that I can put through
Yes.
the old system here and see exactly how high quality we can get it. I would like to hear that.
Absolutely. So any parting words, shout outs, plugs, promos, God
One more,
conscious
yeah.
manifestations?
Um, I guess the one thing that jumped out one more time was our our guest, our shadow host, Rick Quinn, who I think you're actually going to hear in this episode because we have like a drop from him, right? Because he didn't get
Hmm.
in on the covers episode. Yeah, um, his comic book series Spectrum has its sixth issue out now, which I believe is the last issue, and I
Hmm.
believe he also said that the collected version, the trade paperback, is going to be coming in
I believe
either,
later next month, June.
yeah, yeah. So please do go grab that. I got to read the first three or so in a digital format, and like uh I enjoyed it a lot, but I also was like, I need to. I want to finish this out with like the copy in my
Yep.
hand, right? Like, yeah,
I mean, hey,
it's
got the magazine. I feel you, man. Yep.
yeah, same feeling, right? So yeah, I would say check that out. Go check out. I have that on vinyl.com. Sister is basically like a sister site at this point.
No kidding. A lot of back and forth with Michelle and friends on that one.
Yeah.
And I'd actually like to give a shout out, just because I've been corresponding with him up to this point, and hopefully, like I said, whether it's a companion episode or spliced into this one, an interview with Professor of Ethnic Studies at Cal State University East Bay, Nick Baham, Dr. Nick Baham. He's a member of the Church of Coltrane. He also wrote an incredibly comprehensive and wonderful book about it. He's actually starting to write some noir novels now that have really cool characters that are overcoming addiction and things like that. So again, like deeply relatable and personal to me, but just an all-around great guy to talk with. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed or will enjoy what he has to say.
Right on. I think we've earned a theme.
A theme, you say?
Yeah. What do you got? What do you got lined up?
Well, I mean, we could just go with the tried and true, I suppose. But let's see what we got. Let's get spicy, huh?
Hey, I'll take two of them if you got them.
Oh, I've got them. I just got to get them. All right, here we go.
This is the end of the episode. It's a podcast and you can love it. This was the end of 500.
Wow, Mr. Dillon was back, huh?
I mean, can't keep a good dog down. All right, peace out, everybody.
Yeah, later. Good night, everybody.